Hello friends, and welcome to a very echoey edition of Red Panda Real. I have just moved into a new place and I have not yet soundproofed our office.
That's one fine looking
office.
Why doesn't mine look like that?
Because, well, I've been busy watching anime. But hey, would you look at that, I'm watching anime again, what? Except it's last season's anime.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, not a whole lot has been standing out to me for this season's lineup. There are a few shows that have been getting a lot of attention, and with good reason, but most of them aren't really my cup of tea. I have been trying out a few of them, and maybe there will be one or two that I'll share my thoughts on. But that's in the future. And speaking of time, today's video covers the question, what happens when you mix time travel with action, crime, teenage delinquents, and slice of life?
Erased?
No. You get a series that's become extremely popular with boys, but girls too. I wonder if you can guess why. This is Tokyo Revengers. Roll intro. In between the time that the anime series began and the time I actually started watching it, i.e. 3 months, Tokyo Revengers seemed to explode in popularity. It was doing well before, but the anime, which was one of the highest rated of the season by the way, seemed to make it into a phenomenon. The manga became one of the best-selling titles of the year, it got a live-action movie last month, and it's apparently passed Jujutsu Kaisen in terms of popularity. Damn. And you can probably thank the female audience for that too. I mentioned just a few sentences ago that a likely reason for the popularity boom was the increase in the female audience. At first glance, that might be a little confusing. If we go by an incredibly broad look for a second, Tokyo Revengers doesn't seem like a magnet for women. I mean, you got guys growing around, lots of fights, a somewhat more serious subject, and only a handful of female characters. But looking at it like that means you'll be missing one key factor: the guys. Yep, Tokyo Revengers has a lot of cute guys to choose from, and for many that's enough to become a fan of the series. I know, I'm one of them. Now, of course that doesn't mean they wouldn't be interested in any of those other reasons, but come on, look at them. I love me my delinquents, whether it's for the aesthetic or the fact that they're downright entertaining to watch. So why not check out a series that covers both fields? And now that I'm up to date with the anime, I can tell all of you that I really liked it. But I also found it a little overrated. That's right, here come that girl raining on everyone's parade. But seriously, I find myself yet again in the middle of outstanding and mediocre. For all the things that I enjoy about Tokyo Revengers, and I can see why it has the massive fan base that it has, there was also a lot of stuff that I just thought was dumb. As dumb as our protagonist can be. So let's just jump right into it. Our main character is Hanagaki Takemichi, a 26-year-old, well, sounds harsh, but take a look at his life. He lives in an apartment with neighbors who hate him, works at a video store where his superior hates him, and he even gets bullied by little kids. It's a sad, unremarkable life, and the result of him trying to run away from his equally depressing youth. He's not kidding when he says, and that's sad. He gets a reminder of his past when he learns on the news that his middle school sweetheart Hinata and her younger brother Naoto have been killed. And on top of that, Takemichi is pushed onto the train tracks right in the path of an oncoming train. An entire life is gone in a flash.
He was so young and so untalented.
Or is it? Instead of getting the sweet embrace of death, Takemichi travels exactly 12 years into the past, just in time to get beat within an inch of his life. You can see why he wanted to run away. But he also gets the chance to see Hinata again, and being with her inspires him to get revenge on his life, but only for like a hot second. And then he creates a time paradox. By telling the younger Naoto of her fate, Naoto survives, becomes a detective, and works with Takemichi to save Hinata. This already sounds convoluted, but then Hinata was killed by the Tokyo Manji Gang, which in the future is the biggest criminal organization in Tokyo. So not only does Takemichi have to become a part of a gang, he's got to prevent a lot of major events from happening. All of this being, well, difficult because he's Takemichi. In spite of his complete inability to fight, or perhaps because of it, he befriends the gang's leader Mikey and the vice president DRAKEN, i.e. best guy. And by becoming close to those two, Takemichi realizes that they really aren't all that bad. They're violent, yes, and they aren't exactly the best role models, but they're not cold-blooded murderers either. They're just two young guys who have a very idealized version of the future and what it means to be a delinquent. You know, as you do when you're 15. Through all of this, Takemichi has to fight his former tormentors, rival gangs, and a master manipulator who's ultimately responsible for every single bad thing that happens.
No pressure, though.
I know this series is enjoyed by many guys as well, but seeing as I'm not the possessor of a proud pair of balls, you're getting a woman's perspective here. And a Fujo at that. And what I personally like is all the men. Yes, all of them. Even this dickhead. I know that lately there's a movement to not have male-centered media, but fuck man, this is what I'm talking about. An all-male cast is my dream, and although I feel a bit like a predator gushing over all those 15-year-old boys. They don't look 15. I swear, officer, they all seem to be over 18 and they're bad boys, so they probably have fake IDs, and I know it's wrong, but look at this body! Anyway, let's turn the degeneracy down a notch. The cast has so many great, colorful, likable, and hateable characters that are a lot of fun to watch. My favorites are of course Mikey and DRAKEN, especially DRAKEN, my sweet Viking boy. Whenever I see those two young blood, just starts playing in my head because the vibe is just so similar. I also adore Akun, and frankly this dude is an asshat and a half, a downright annoying hemorrhoid, but even he is hot. I think out of everyone here, only Takemichi and Naoto are not hot. It's almost like they made the bad guys hot to make me question my morality. Joke's on them though, I have no qualms liking villains. There was this Tumblr post going around about villains being cool as potential lovers because they'll put you before the whole world. Where was I going with this? Anyway, now I also do like time travel, and I know that people hate on Erased, but I enjoyed Erased because it appealed to my pea-brain pleasures like cute main guy and troubled main girl and creepy-ass teacher. And anyway, I'll be bashing the time travel aspects later in this ramble commentary, but if we don't look at the logic of it all, it's quite entertaining. It's definitely a series you need to turn your brain off a little to enjoy, but you know, when there are so many cute guys together doing vaguely homoerotic stuff, my brain automatically shuts off and my inner cave woman just lets out a squeal. Aside from those reasons, however, I did find myself getting invested in the story and the setting. I always enjoy seeing how gangster or biker gangs operate and the conflicts that emerge from within their hierarchy. And with such a large group of eccentric or borderline psychotic characters, something interesting is bound to happen. And Mikey's goal of making Tolman a big family unit to bring into a new age for delinquents was something I found myself getting behind. It was naive, yes, and morally questionable, but hey, I'm not shy about morally questionable actions. All of this also makes the present Tolman all the more tragic. They fell so far from those ideals, and we want Takemichi to stop them from going down that path. And to top it all off, we get a real banger of an OP. I'm not skipping this one. Uh-oh. Here come the bad stuff. And in Tokyo Revengers' case, I can narrow my main problems down to 3 things. First of all, the story of Tokyo Revengers manages to be both simple to understand yet unnecessarily complex and confusing. Time travel is not an easy concept to do right. It's a common concept for sure, but it also means you need to set up a bunch of rules to make sure it doesn't confuse the audience. And at first glance, Tokyo Revengers seems to have this figured out. Takemichi can travel 12 years into the past or into the future by shaking Naoto's hand. Which is stupid, but anyway. But by doing this, he also experiences blackouts as to what happened between those periods, leaving him pretty confused. But remember I said, at first, because Tokyo Revengers ends up creating a lot of issues in how its time travel works and how it affects the multiple timelines it creates. I can excuse the fact that we don't really know how Takemichi traveled to the past to begin with. The manga still has one last arc to go through, so it might be explained then. Maybe. So let's start with when Takemichi first returns to the present. Naoto now survives because he took Takemichi's advice and joined the police to save Hinata. Unsuccessfully, sure, but he tried. And through all of that, he manages to figure out how Takemichi's power works, not through trial and error, but just a guess. I mean, he's right, but it feels downright dumb that he figured it out without any real evidence to support it. And he was so confident in it too, like, hey, here's my guess. I'm definitely right. Naoto also has a remarkable recollection of everything that happens in every alternate timeline that Takemichi creates. Not only does he know when and where Takemichi will be every time he alters the past, but he remembers everything they've gone through. In the manga, even when Takemichi becomes a gangster in the future, Naoto still knows about every other timeline. The likely answer to all of this is time travel.
It just works.
Also, is it just me, or is it really strange that there are literally hundreds of middle schoolers who are not only violent, but are ready to kill each other? Not even high schoolers, but middle schoolers. Like, was this a problem in Japan in 2005? I know they were huge in the 80s and 90s, but the mid-2000s is kind of pushing it to me. Next up, we have the animation. It's not that the show looks bad, the characters don't stray far from the manga and it looks okay overall. But that's the thing, it's only okay. It gets the job done, but it doesn't really stand out, which is a shame. The manga's artwork is great, it has a gritty look and feel with some very impressive scenes, and I wish the anime could have had a bit more of that. It does pick up in the fight scenes, but even then the animation still leaves a bit to be desired. Maybe it's because Studio Linden Films isn't exactly one of the big names right now. A few major titles here and there, but also many that don't seem to be talked about as much. Or, they're infamous.
What is that? What is that?
The mid-level animation would be one thing. But then we get to the censorship. And I'm not talking about 4Kids level of bad either. No, we get literal slideshows of scenes. Why did this happen, you may ask? Well, let's just say that Toman's symbol is one that a certain Austrian man used for a certain German political party that created certain connotations to anyone who decides, yeah, it's the swastika.
The SS on my jacket stands for super smooth.
Because the manji version is the official symbol of Toman, every episode that has a lot of members grouped together is heavily edited. So much so that I can barely understand what's going on half the time. And it's inconsistent too, because sometimes they'll remove the symbol from the clothes or have a bunch of light on everything. And other times, this! They were probably working on a limited budget for this, but are you telling me they couldn't have just gone the full JoJo route here? It may have looked dumb, but at least I could figure out what's going on. I get it, the symbol is incredibly sensitive for us Westerners, so the censors probably didn't want to give people the idea that my boy DRAKEN was a
Nazi.
But could they have at least done a good job of actually censoring it? Or even give a PSA at the start of the episode?
This is crack.
And now we have come to the last major problem of the series. Takemichi. Takemichi, and I'm not mincing words here, is the prime example of a little bitch. He's nicknamed the Crybaby Hero, and for a good reason, because he can barely go an episode without crying. Seriously, this guy does literally anything, and he ends up bawling soon after. Takemichi might be a man of
sheer fucking will.
but that's only fun to watch for so long. I mean, I can kinda see what they were going for with this character. He's someone who's been beat down so much in life that he's resigned himself to being no better than
Trash man.
always apologizing and never standing up for himself, and even though he wants to improve himself and become a hero, it's just not that easy. This would all make for a good starting point, except for the fact that Takemichi forgot the bit about actually trying to improve. Most of the time, he's all talk and no game. It's like if you took Mob's self-improvement arc but had him quit every chapter so he can complain about how weak he is. It gets annoying and it makes his eventual triumph just feel less earned. If I wanted to make an immediate comparison to a character in a similar boat to Takemichi though, it would have to be Onizuka. I know, how can I put ya boy Onizuka on the same level as, well, this. But hear me out for a moment. Both characters are in their 20s, are former delinquents who've been shunned by society and don't have much going on for them. Onizuka is basically a superhero, yes, but he's not all that bright either, so it evens out. But where Onizuka shines is that he can almost always think of the most batshit insane plan to get out of any situation. A plan that's either too risky or something no sane or rational person would even consider. And that's exactly why they work too. Takemichi might help save the day, yes, but in the least impressive way possible. He might be an adult in a child's body, but he rarely has any deeper thought or insight to anyone around him besides knowing the future. He's constantly caught in this loop of crying, becoming motivated to change, grows a massive pair of balls, but it's all just so he can get his ass kicked once again. Whenever he ends up in a fight with somebody who is way stronger than he is, Takemichi really has only one plan in mind. Try to survive long enough in the hope that someone who is actually capable comes to save the day. Even though that plan always seems to work, once he overcomes that obstacle, he just ends up repeating the whole loop again. No sign of him thinking that maybe next time I shouldn't try to act like a human punching bag. Maybe a more thought-through plan would be better. While he does manage to actually improve himself over the course of the series, it comes at a far slower pace than it should have. He didn't need to become a badass on the same level as Mikey or DRAKEN, but there at least could have been more of an effort on his part. Tokyo Revengers had a lot of potential to have Takemichi learn from his mistakes as a child and handle them in a far more serious and adult-like way. And while he is able to come through and protect his friends, I don't think he's quite the hero he could have been. And that's a shame. Do all of these things matter in the long run? Obviously they do for me, but that doesn't mean I'll stop watching Tokyo Revengers. Even with all of its shortcomings, I find myself coming back to the characters, the story, and the hope that somehow, some way, it'll all work out for them in the end. So if this series speaks to you, or you just want to see cute guys doing not-so-legal things, then consider checking it out. Maybe then we can all get together to start our own fan club for our favorite Viking boy. See you all next time!